It's Sway in the morning.
Only on Shade 45.
Sway in the morning, Shade 45, man. It's Fantasy Fridays right here. Debbie Devs riding shotgun. Good friend of mine has just stepped into the room earlier today. One of our stories in our Celebrity Wire was about the death of Sylvia Robinson and a significant role that she played in the development of hip hop culture and rap as a business with Sugar Hill Records and some of the, Rappers Delight to the Message, with Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5 and I believe Sequence was Sequence, which is the group that Angie Stone was a part of. If you all the R&B lovers, Angie Stone was actually a rapper too before she started singing, and she was a part of a group called Sequence. I'm gonna funk you right on up. I'm gonna funk you right on up. Do 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 do. Anyway, so Dan Charnas, a great that's the beat right there. Dan Charnas, the author of the book The Big Payback: The History of the Business of Hip Hop, is here with us this morning. Give him a round of applause to help bring to light the impact that Sylvia Robinson made in this game. And I think it's important being here at Shade 45, which is the premier hip hop station in the country, arguably the world, owned by Eminem and Paul Rosenberg, his manager, that we take a moment out for this lesson, in a sense, or just enlightenment, if you will. Sylvia Robinson, what she did at that time in this country in the 70s, for her to be a woman of color and to start up this company, Sugar Hill Records. Talk about the significance of that and just how rare that was at that time, especially in the music business,
right,
of anybody of color to be in power.
Right. Well, I mean, the backdrop for all of this is that the music business was founded in Jim Crow. For those who don't know what that is, it's the laws that basically kept America segregated and kept black folks oppressed after the abolition of slavery for about 100 years, right? So when the record business was just starting in the early 20th century, most of black America was still, figuratively in chains, right? So the first records that came out in the record business of black folks were actually called race records. That's what they called them.
Yeah,
in the 1920s.
I don't remember, but I read about that. Like that in the 1920s. I remember that. No, but go ahead.
We won't discuss your age.
Okay, yeah. I'm 89, 85. Go ahead.
Right. So, this is the legacy. The legacy of the music business was as segregated as America was, even though all of the music that even the white musicians played was basically derived in some form or fashion from the music of African Americans, right? Jazz, the blues, rhythm and blues, which became rock and roll.
Yep.
Right. So Sylvia comes up in this era. She's from Harlem. She starts making records at 13 years old. She learns how to get burned and how not to get burned, just like everybody else. And the thing that makes a difference for her when she's an artist is she marries a guy named Joe Robinson. And Joe Robinson was a former numbers runner in Harlem. And Joe Robinson was a natural entrepreneur. And Joe encouraged her to have ownership of what she had. Of course, Joe wanted to own a part of it too, right? But not saying anything, they were really in love, right? Okay. Joe and Sylvia, they're a couple for the ages. And so she quickly transitioned from being an artist to being a record label owner in the 1960s when, a lot of black folks did. Most of the cultural capital was owned by white entrepreneurs or public corporations, right?
And most black artists were being ripped off.
That's right.
From Little Richard on up.
That's right.
Okay.
And so Joe and Sylvia in the 1970s, and Sylvia, I guess you talked about her catalog, right? Shame, 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 and Love on a Two-Way Street, and the moments. Stacey Lattisaw. Before Stacey Lattisaw.
I'm joking.
Right. So this is so they were doing it when so few black entrepreneurs were doing it, but they ran into trouble in the mid-1970s because, you had to hustle being an independent. So there were things like payola. There were things like maybe not paying your taxes, maybe not paying your artists.
Real quick, payola being
a record company paying a DJ or a programmer to get your music played on the air.
Okay, not paying your taxes and go ahead.
Right. Okay. So by the end of the 1970s, Sylvia was sort of this washed up producer / entrepreneur. Her company was headed into bankruptcy. She and Joe were not doing well. And in my book, The Big Payback, where we begin her story is she's at this religious picnic in New Jersey trying to basically, like talk to God, like what's happening with my life. I think she's in her late 30s at that point or early 40s. And she makes this prayer and she says she gets this vision that God is going to smite their enemies, Polygram, which is trying to take all their masters and stuff, and she will be redeemed. That night, she goes to the Harlem World Club in Harlem, right? And she sees Lovebug Starsky. She sees her first rapper, and she turns to her sister and she says, Diane, can you imagine what it'd be like if they were rapping for the Lord? So she basically said that this was the moment, right? This was her sign from God, that this was what she was going to do. At first, she tried to get Lovebug Starsky to make a record. I don't think he didn't get the message or he wasn't interested. So then she gets her son, Joey, to wrangle a couple of rappers, actually 3 rappers in New Jersey to make a song. That was Rapper's Delight.
We're coming back with more. Dan Charnas, the author of The Big Payback. You got any questions? This is history. 888-SHADE-45. Rest in peace to Sylvia Robinson. And this is where it all began.
Come alive, y'all, and give me what you got. I guess by now you can take a hunch and find that I am the baby of the bunch. But that's okay, I still keep in stride, cause all I'm here to do is just wiggle your behind. Singing on and on and on and on. The beat don't stop until the break of dawn. Set on and on and on and on. Rock, y'all. I'm gonna freak you here, I'm gonna freak you there. I'm gonna freak you out of this atmosphere, cause I'm one of a kind and I'll share delight.
What happened to the other 10 minutes of the song?
I don't know.
We're
man.
not going to go the rest?
That's what I used to do when I was a kid, man. I used to just jump through the song.
That's it.
That's it.
That was the song.
Dan Charnas is here. Listen, anybody tuned in right now, if you ever want to get a great piece of work that breaks down the music business of rap, the history of the business of hip-hop, be sure to go online today and purchase The Big Payback by Dan Charnas. The most accurate book I've read personally. I've never read a book more accurate. The way you tell the story of the history of the music business. Today we're talking about Sylvia Robinson and the impact she made on the music business. Sugar Hill Gang of Sugar Hill Records. It just kind of made rap music a global phenomenon. Would you agree?
It absolutely did.
Okay.
I mean, the most amazing thing about hip hop is that unlike other genres, right, punk rock or rock and roll, they begin in obscurity, right? These little 7-inch vinyl singles, and you can't even find them anymore. But hip hop begins with the most auspicious release. I mean, it literally begins with the best-selling 12-inch of all time at that time.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Rappers.
And overnight, Sylvia and Joe and their company, Sugar Hill Records, become a player. And they essentially corner the market on what we'll call real hip-hop, right? Because that was a prefabricated group. And they had a lot of folks had a lot of beef with Sylvia over that in the hip-hop community.
Namely, Grandmaster Cass.
That's
one
right.
of them.
That's
because formerly known as Casanova,
CASNOVA, right?
Yeah, and because his rhymes were literally lifted, taken.
Right.
Which rapper said his rhyme?
That was Hank.
Big Hank used his rhymes because Hank used to work in his management.
Hank
right?
was a roadie, of sorts for Kaz, and he said, Kaz, Mrs. Rob, she wants to do a song with us. Can I have some of your rhymes? And Kaz just tosses the rhyme book at him like, here, make a record. It was just stuff you did at parties. Why would talking over a record be on a record, right? That's how crazy that notion was. Wow. But it wasn't crazy to Sylvia. And that's what Sylvia's genius is. That and the fact that if you listen to this record, this was made in 1970. Listen how good it sounds.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, man.
And listen to how, you can make fun of the lyricist all you want, but Wonder Mike saying, basically introducing hip. What you hear is not a test. He's telling you what you're about to hear is some crazy shit.
Yeah, it's not check mic check testing 1 2 1 2. It's not a test.
He's introducing it to America, and then he predicts, America, we love you, and America loved hip hop back.
Yeah.
Sylvia, if you follow Twitter, if you follow some of the comments on her death, there is a bit of controversy. You know, people say, somebody said Sylvia Crook Robinson. You know, she did get a reputation. She and Joe did get a reputation for not paying artists. Joe Robinson in particular had a reputation for intimidation. And I think that reputation is well deserved. You know, they didn't pay artists unless they felt like paying artists. Joe did intimidate people and tried to make people think that he was the boss of Harlem when he really wasn't, right? At the same time, you can't deny the contribution that this woman made, right? First of all, she's one of the first female record producers in history, even before her record company. She was producing for Ike and Tina Turner, right? And probably only one or two producers before her that were female. Then she produces this incredible record that sets off an entire genre. And then later on, when she signs Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, there's this point where one of her studio musicians comes in with this idea for a record he's got called The Jungle. Yeah. And she wants Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five to perform it. So she gets Mel in to do a couple of verses. Melly Mel, right. And they record it, and Flash hears the demo of The Jungle.
Grandmaster Flash.
And he hates it because he says, this is somber. This is about broken glass everywhere. You know, this is about poverty. Nobody wants to dance to that. But it was Sylvia Robinson who believed in that song. It was Sylvia Robinson. And so she was the person who named the song The Message.
My favorite song of all time, in my opinion, one of the most important. Shade 45, Sway in the Morning. You got any questions, call us, 888 Shade 45. Dan Charnas, author of The Big Payback, is with us.